Lacey Duncan wasn't sure if she would ever have been able to marry. However, some things were certain, including the fact that she was going to be a mother, and God not only made her wish come true, but also used it to keep the sisters together, despite the fact that her 6 daughters offered her great joy and chaos. Lacey Duncan believes that life would be so empty, blind, and boring if they were not present, after opening her heart and home to 6 sisters in need of a happy and loving family 7 years ago. Lacey Duncan couldn't be happier, even though her life suddenly became a chaotic whirlwind of pink dresses. The 32-year-old mother from Fresno, California, describes her children as the loves of her life. Sophia, 9, twins Natalie and Melanie, 7, Kylie, 6, Leah, 4, and Cecily, 2, are her daughters. They bring me so much joy and chaos, but life would be so empty, boring, and uninteresting if it weren't for them, says Lacey Duncan in an interview with People magazine. It's a privilege to be their mother, and warms my heart every time I see them. Having raised the 6 girls for nearly a year, Lacey was convinced to keep the group together. She adopted 5 of the 6 girls in July 2013, claiming she felt strongly about keeping the group together. She also worked hard to make sure Cecily, the girls' younger sister, was welcomed into the family as soon as she was born. Cecily's official adoption was celebrated by the family in March of 2015. According to Lacey Duncan, who raised the children with the help of her parents Jerry and Ronnie Duncan, "We merged into a family from the first moment I met them. I knew they held a particular place in my heart. It always seemed right," says author Lacey. She was 25 years old when she began researching the requirements to become a foster parent in California. In 2011, as she explains, marriage wasn't on my horizon at the time, so I decided to take a step back to evaluate my life and decided it was okay that I didn't require marriage. But I knew that if I didn't become a mother, I would live in regret for the rest of my life. Lacey completed the certification process in June 2011, and 3 months later received an emergency call for foster care placements for Sophia, Natalie, Melanie, and Kylie, who were to be placed immediately. Leah, who was a newborn at the time, was placed with a foster family who was better able to care for children in general and infants in particular. The social worker called and I answered yes. When I interrupted her, I'm not sure why I felt compelled to say yes, but I did. And she added, I have no idea why I felt compelled to say yes if I didn't even consider not keeping them together. For me, it was a case of all or nothing. The girls arrived at Lacey's 4-bedroom home, living with her mother, Jerry, and father, Ronnie. A few hours after they left the hotel, Sophia, Natalie, Melanie, and Kylie began to feel at home in just a few days, and their adoptive family immediately fell in love with the girls. After meeting them for the first time, they bonded emotionally with Lacey very quickly. 62-year-old Jerry Duncan tells People magazine that she admired her greatly, and Lacey continually looked for ways to help them into the best people they could be. It seemed like a natural fit from the beginning, says the grandmother. In the 9 months that followed, Lacey and her parents cared for the 4 sisters until their birth mother would grant her custody. Leah was also returned to her birth mother. The birth family welcomed us into their home and allowed us to care for the girls. They were greatly missed, explains Lacey. She called me a little over a month later and asked if I would be interested in adopting the 5 girls. I said yes right away. I was surprised because I knew it had to have been a difficult decision to make. She had been thinking about it for a few weeks. She was worried about how her family would react to her decision. Then I told her, you are doing more for them than I could. They were too important to me to give up, and you love them more than you love yourself, which is significant, and a lot of people wouldn't. A year had passed before the adoption was finalized, and during that time, the girl's birth mother learned that she had become pregnant with her 6th child. As Lacey explains, this was my children's younger sister, so it wasn't even a question for me to bring Cecily into the home as well. She became a legal member of the family in March 2015. The Duncan family celebrates their anniversary the day that Cecily came home, a word Lacey developed to commemorate the sweet day when her family became complete. I'm very fond of them. We're very proud of them. Lacey expresses her delight. She wouldn't trade any of them for the world. I feel incredibly privileged to be their mommy. From the beginning, when Lacey Duncan considered becoming a mother, she could only see one thing in her future with males. She was right. It wasn't that I could only bond with a son when I daydreamed about having a family. I could only imagine myself with a child, says 32-year-old Lacey Duncan of Fresno, California. Duncan, then in her early 20s and living with her parents, longed for a child, but didn't consider marriage. Duncan did her research and decided to foster a child first on her mother's recommendation, and discovered a family services agency with offices throughout California that specializes in foster care and adoption. Duncan was now a foster parent. A year after submitting an application to become a foster parent herself, Duncan became certified in June 2011 after completing numerous hours of training, in addition to passing a home study exam. She accepted a gift of a race car bed from a family friend. By late September, Duncan was beginning to worry that as a single woman, she would never be hired again if she missed. Finally, a social worker called late at night and informed Duncan that they had an emergency foster care placement for 4 sisters, twins ages 5, 2, and 1-year-old. She told me she had an emergency foster care placement, Duncan recalls, in the interest of maintaining the chosen child's privacy announcement, so as not to reveal the details of the circumstances of her narrative. I was barely awake when I said yes. Within a couple of hours, Duncan had 4 confused little girls running around her living room, burning up energy, nervous. They were small and scared when they were taken to a stranger's house in the middle of the night, remembers Duncan, who, along with her mother, comforted the tired, crying children and tucked them into bed. She rocked the baby to sleep. The next morning, Duncan arrived at work and prepared to transport Sophia, the oldest, to her kindergarten class that was scheduled for that day. As Duncan recalls, I was preparing breakfast for her when she asked me whether I had daughters and if she could be my daughter, which broke my heart. She asked what she could call me, and I answered my name, Lacey, but you can call me anything you want. She was pleased with my answer. By the time I took her to school and turned her in, she was introducing me as her mother to the rest of the students. Later that day, Duncan discovered that the girls, Sophia, Natalie, Melanie, and Kylie, who was 1 year old at the time, had a sister, Leah, who had been born the night before. In the meantime, Leah was placed with a foster parent who had previous experience with newborns. The older girls were reunited with their birth mother after 9 months separated. I tried to keep the trust that I would determine where they were destined, and in my heart that place was here. After about a month, the girl's birth mother came to the conclusion that it would be too difficult for her to care for the children alone. Finally, Duncan was able to start the family she had dreamed of. If you made it to the end of this video, I invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell so that YouTube notifies you every time a new video is uploaded.